Hi parents, this is Dr. Jameel Smith, school psychologist, limited license psychologist with the Galvin Growth Group and therapist with the Galvin Growth Group, and wanted to come with our next installment on juggling parenting and social distancing during COVID-19 with some quick strategies for managing emotions. So by now, you probably have kids at home and adults at home who are probably just dealing with a range of emotions that are sort of cropping up and coming out of different situations that may be occurring. Sometimes there's a lot of stress and tension when everybody's still under one roof and trying to manage so many things. So I thought that what I do this evening is to provide you with some quick ideas for how to really manage strong emotions. So the one thing you want to think about when you are feeling sort of overwhelmed or feeling like there's a lot of stress that you're experiencing is to tap into and try to figure out, what is the emotion you're feeling? And then I often tell students that I work with and some parents that it can be helpful if you try to rate how you feel. On a scale of 1 to 10, give it a number, 10 being the most intense you are feeling that emotion, and 1 sort of being just barely there, barely noticeable to yourself. When you do that, when you try to give yourself some way to measure how intensely you are feeling that emotion, that can give you some idea about what to do about it. Right? So when your emotions are sort of at a level of 8, 9, or 10, that means that you are really feeling them very intensely. Oftentimes you might even feel them physically. Maybe your ears feel warm, they're turning red, your heart is racing. Perhaps you might even hear a ringing in your ear. You might even be seeing red. And so when you physically begin to feel emotions, a lot of times it's difficult because you don't really think rationally. The part of your brain that's sort of wired to be able to problem solve and to think rationally is sort of being bullied by the part of your brain that is responding to those really intense emotions. And so the 2 strategies I have for you when you're sort of at an 8, a 9, or 10 with some of those really intense, sometimes negative emotions, such as anger, frustration, is to sort of help you figure out how to dial it down. And so there's a tool, a technique, a way of thinking about it in managing those emotions called distress tolerance. And what you're trying to do is to help yourself either be able to, you know, push through and keep yourself in a certain space until that emotion passes, or that emotion at least dials down so that you can begin to think rationally and problem solve the situation that's sort of connected to those emotions. One thing you can do, parents, is for yourself, is what's called radical acceptance. And so in this space, what you're trying to do is, rather than staying in the space of this feels difficult, I want to change this emotion, I want to change the situation that's going on, what you're doing is radically accepting it so that you can sort of tolerate it and either move past it or bring that emotion down. So what do I mean by that? So you are in the house with your kids, and perhaps your kids are bickering, and they've been bickering all day and nonstop, and they're coming to you to be the referee. Nobody's picking up their toys, nobody's cleaning up after themselves. It's the end of the day, and you've just had it. You have had it. You're at your limit. And so a typical response might be that, you might snap at your kids, you might even yell. Fuss at them and maybe say things that really either aren't helpful in the particular situation, but you're needing some sort of way to get out those emotions. Radical acceptance might look like you saying, you know what, they're arguing and they can figure it out, and I'm just going to accept it right now. I'm going to step back and go into my own space while that is happening. It's frustrating, but I accept that it's happening. If you lose your job, a typical reaction might be, this is unfair. I'm the best employee. I shouldn't have been the one to have been let go. You know, this sucks. I don't like this. And then you get spinning into worrying and so forth. Radical acceptance would look like, you know what, this isn't fair, but I'm going to accept that this is my new reality. And at this very moment, I have my basic needs taken care of. So you're sort of deciding and making a choice to accept what is happening so that you can manage the emotions connected to it. So this is something that can be easier for older kids or adults to do. But even younger kids can do it if they're sort of coached along in it. All right, so that's radical acceptance. Another strategy is what's called the ice cube challenge. And this can be really fun whether you're dealing with a smaller child, an adolescent, or even adults. So sometimes when you're at an 8 or 9 or 10, that emotion is sort of just taking over. You almost can feel like it is just superseding any ability to speak or to think rationally. And so what you can do is take an ice cube. And so I have this ice cube here in my hand. And what you're doing is you're trying to tolerate the sensation that the ice cube is presenting. And you're sort of taking yourself through the experience of, how can I tolerate this discomfort and focus on what I need to do to tolerate it, and then taking from that experience to be able to tolerate other difficult kinds of emotions. So for example, right now I'm holding the ice cube, and you can focus on the sensations. It feels very cold in my hand. It's not very comfortable. It's starting to feel numb in my hand. And me talking to you, I'm distracting myself from actually feeling it. And so that's helping me to be able to tolerate that pain. You can focus on thinking to yourself, how long can I hold this and endure? When you have something that's really uncomfortable in your hand, like an ice cube, it begins to be more difficult to think about the other things that really have you upset. And if you focus on, holding that ice in a tight grip and doing all that you can to hold it as long as you can, you're sort of helping yourself to tolerate those big emotions. And what you begin to understand is that it becomes more difficult to do other things. As I'm talking to you and I'm holding this ice cube, I'm really having to focus on my words and my stream of thought in order to be able to tolerate this. And so when you use this kind of strategy, especially with kids, the thing you want to focus on is to help them to just be able to do this. So if you have a kid who's holding an ice cube and you're trying to get them to just kind of focus on the ice, focus on that sensation so that their emotions can dial back, this is not the time for you to be talking to them about, why did you do this and how could you do that and you should have did this and you should have known that. It's not the time to engage in any language or conversation. They're just sitting with the ice. So that's one point. You don't want to try to problem solve at this moment, because you can actually re-escalate the intense emotions that your kid is experiencing. Or even if you do it for yourself and someone's trying to have a conversation with you, you want to try to say, give me a minute so that I can just kind of try to manage what's going on inside of me with my emotions. So I'm going to put that down. If you can do this, it can be really helpful, because right now that sensation in my hand, there's a sense of relief, and it actually has an opposite effect of the adrenaline pumping within me and my heartbeat racing and things like that. So that's something that you can try. I have used this ice cube strategy. I've seen it used with middle schoolers, and I've seen it used with little people like 4 years old. And it really does work as a way to sort of channel your attention to what's going on with the sensation of the ice in your hand, so that whatever it is that's got you upset or has got your kid upset begins to go on the back burner because you're focusing on that ice and that sensation. So those are just a couple strategies. The University of Michigan Department of Psychiatry has a wonderful website, trails to wellness.org, which has these particular strategies on there, as well as a wealth of other curriculum and tools for working with kids in schools, and a lot of different tips for managing depression and anxiety. But I wanted to bring these two tools to you so that, you know, as you're experiencing those really big emotions in really intense ways at home, you have some strategies to be able to de-escalate and then problem solve. Hang in there, parents.